Welcome to Glocal Voices, the official podcast of the Center for Socially Engaged Theatre at the University of Regina.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Glocal Voices. My name is Taiwo Afolabi. I'm at the Center for Socially Engaged Theatre. And on this exciting episode, we have the opportunity to be talking to Professor Katie Dawson, and Katie will be introducing herself shortly. Just a quick reminder, this series is connected to IDIERI 11th, 2025. And then we had some presentations and some recording right on site. And then for so many reasons, including the fact that Katie was part of those that organized the conference, we couldn't get to it on site. And so we're doing recording this virtually. Shout out to my team, Caleb, Gabriel, and Shola, and Tara, and Walter working behind the scene to put all of this together. And really appreciate the fact that we're able to bring this series as part of Festival of Art and Discourse for 2025 at the Center for Social Engaged Theatre. So with that, I want to pass it on to Katie to quickly introduce herself while we get onto the conversation today. Over to you, Katie.
Thanks, Taiwo. My name is Katie Dawson. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an associate professor of theater at the University of Texas at Austin, where I also head up a 20-year professional learning model called Drama for Schools. We create long-term partnerships with schools, teachers, teaching artists, governments at times, arts organizations, who are interested in improving the learning culture of the classroom through the arts. And that is really the kind of main way to describe what I do. I'm really interested in how do we use the arts to generate new pedagogical possibilities to create schools, educational spaces that we can all thrive in.
Amazing. I love your work. I've read it, and I'm excited, and I appreciate rather the fact that I was able to experience your presentation, like two of them at IDIERI. So thank you for the amazing work that you're doing, not just only with schools, but also with teachers, with grad students, and really mentoring and training grad students, particularly those from equity deserving communities. And we want to talk about youth PAR today, youth participatory action research. What does that even mean?
Good question. And I'm still working on that definition myself, but youth participatory action research, or one of those fabulous acronyms that we love so much in academia, we shorten that to YPAR, really comes out of participatory action research. And if we think about participatory action research as a methodology that in its simplest form is inviting us to think about who has access to and is able to make change within a system. I think so often academics and many other people in different systems are on the outside looking at the inside folks and saying, hey, we can fix this, or you should do that because in my specialized separate little, perhaps ivory tower, we have come up with this great idea that will fix your problem. And we know that, it's important to do that work for in many fields, but I think particularly in the spaces of thinking about education, which is so contextually and sociopolitically situated, right? What does it mean to drive change? And I would say change is an idea towards improvement from within, to recognize that the adults and young people working within an educational system have a wealth of knowledge, and that might be cultural wealth of how to navigate challenging systems or their own experience as multilingual learners, or it might be just knowledge of their system and what it actually needs. And it's not ever to say that there aren't outside things that are incredibly helpful to inside systems and people within them, but there should be and can be a place of partnering together that really does value the knowledge and meaning making that happens from certainly the adults, so the teachers, and that's where participatory action research often happens. It's inviting teachers to research their own practice to collect data, to think about an inquiry question, to notice what there is to know, to reflectively and reflexively like think about what their values are as a teacher and how they might enact those through new methods. And in my world, new methods means maybe using the arts as a methodology to make the kinds of changes they'd like to see in their classroom. And I have been doing that participatory action research change model for many years with teachers. It's how I developed the thing that I call drama-based pedagogy. And I feel it's crucial anytime I talk about drama-based pedagogy. Here's another acronym, DBP. How I talk about DBP, it's not something that I developed. It is something that I've worked with teachers and my graduate students and my undergraduate students and teaching artists and all these folks in lots of different global contexts to develop over many, many years, starting with an indigenous Koyukon Athabascan community almost 20 years ago, who first tackled these questions with me as a way to think about culturally responsive teaching in their very complex and abundantly rich context. Anyway, so all that to say, I've been working with teachers on this for a while, and more recently have begun to realize that there's a gap in my work, that we are still in some ways reinscribing old ideas by just making this a teacher-based initiative. And was super lucky, like in all of my training and research work, I was lucky enough to partner with some folks in South Australia in the Murray Lands area, which is a fairly remote rural community, where they were piloting a model called the student learning community. So young people from the primary schools across a very large area were getting to come together and to think about a practice that might invite change in their schools. And so there was a STEM work, and there was an indigenous Aboriginal group. And this group decided to tackle ideas around literacy, and how to do that was really the question. And one of the principals of the school had been in a workshop with me doing that PAR work with teachers and administrators, using drama-based pedagogy as a method. And she's like, would you be willing to bring that to my students and see if they want to use it to work on literacy issues? And I was like, brilliant, yeah. So I did. And I auditioned for them, and they gave me some good feedback. And we decided to work together. And so that became a 4-year process of me honestly unlearning a lot of biases I think I held about how young people can actually design drama-based work in really meaningful ways. They were as strong as any adult teacher group I have ever trained. They were amazing and are amazing. And so through that process, I got very interested in this idea of student learning communities. And then I decided to bring that work to the US. And frankly, as I'm sure you and other listeners are aware, the US is a tricky place, really tricky now. But even 4 or 5 years ago, when we were trying to first do this, our educational system is really siloed. We have done high stakes testing for years. We, hold teachers accountable for those test scores. And I just didn't know if I could get a school invested in troubling out this idea with me, and bought in enough so that when things inevitably go wrong, because everything always does, that it wasn't the arts part that we were struggling with, it was maybe the other pieces of it. I really wanted to sort of see if I could figure out the methodology of having young people work with teachers. And one thing we did that was really crucial is immediately we started to call it the student teacher learning community. And it's partly to honor the highly systemic nature of education. I mean, I don't think even when I was working in Australia, it was really a student learning community. And I think where the challenges happened was that we didn't have enough teacher buy-in at times. So I think to change a system, you need all of those members of the community across the system to be bought in and working towards change and having a common vocabulary. So the student teacher learning community was born, and we got a school that already had committed to arts integration as a method, but we're really struggling on how to implement it. So that it wasn't the arts part that was hard, it was how to do it well. And then they agreed to spend 2 years with us, having the young people analyze arts integration on their campus to see what was working or not. They collected data. They thought about it. They realized that it was taught pretty unevenly and that they needed more methods to do arts integration well, which is really our expertise. So we developed trainings with them that at times they co-led or led with other teachers. They co-designed lessons that the third, fourth, and fifth graders. So these were 10, 8, 9, and 10-year-olds, and 11-year-olds, some of them, taught in the early childhood classrooms on campus. That was really exciting. But they helped us pick out particular strategies that the whole school would focus on working across the curriculum. So there were all these wonderful ideas and ideas where the teachers and students really got to conceptualize the work together. And that really, I thought, was effective, and led me into just sort of rethinking any project I was doing. Where might I have a place and space where a student and teacher learning community could come together, maybe from the beginning to devise that project, to do the work, and ideally to be co-research on the eventual outcomes of what we were doing.
Interesting. I know that you've given sort of like, an example. The other example, one or two more you want to add to that? And what are the key lessons for you of using YPR over the years that you have been exploring these methodologies and kind of building it in a more robust way? Because I feel like, again, based on your work that I've read and your presentations that I've seen, it's a lot of repertoire that you have there, which is really remarkable. So any lessons that you wanted to share with us today based on that?
That's a great question. I appreciate it. Thank you. I think the big question is, what is YPAR? If you're going to look at, and I would suggest you look at Michelle Fine. Fine and Camarada have an excellent book on YPAR that I think is really helpful. There's a number of edited collections. Most of the folks who are writing about YPAR are, as they should, looking at issues of critical race theory and justice within education with primarily secondary students. Like, that's often how it's done. I'm really interested. I do not have the answer to this, but I am really interested in how we, as drama and theater artists, and I would maybe expand that to visual artists, and you can pick your dance art, any art form, how artists who are creating projects with young people about something inherently are doing a form of YPAR. So if YPAR is about coming up with a question and researching that and thinking and evaluating the ways if you're devising a play about a social issue, we are doing research. Maybe that research is our own lives, or maybe that's interviewing people we know, or literally doing research on a subject in the news or another place. So I think looking at those things, and then you evaluate that, right? To make what parts go into a play, we have to pick, I want to use that one. I don't want to use that one. I think that one's really important. And those conversations that happen in the ensemble with adults and young people, or across just the young people, are central to a meaning-making process that all researchers do. It's just how we do it through an arts-based method. And then taking those ideas and becoming a form of a learning designer and an aesthetic artist learning designer, who's then going to craft those pieces together to tell a particular story. And we're going to think about the visual storytelling that happens and the embodied expression. And we're going to use all of these aesthetic skills and tools that we have as artists to help communicate the information. And we watch scenes and give each other critical feedback and revise it. And, so we are working really as a form of designer, a learning designer, through an aesthetic approach. And then we are offering that to an audience. Our audiences are kind of learning spaces. So this kind of as a sort of TIE feels what I'm giving here, but sort of theater and education feel. So the audience is responding to it, and they are engaging with our ideas. And then ideally, I think the best youth theater has a moment of those young people getting feedback on their work, right? They're engaging in a talk back afterwards. Maybe that's the authentic way to do that. Or maybe they're moving that into a more kind of social science form of a survey, or some other sort of form, or interviews, or other things that we have used to do audience reception studies, right? Young people are capable and do all those things in our youth theater models, right? And then from that, they know how they've learned a lot, and now they're going to go do their next play, right? Their next devised piece. So I think and that really is a YPAR cycle that I just described. You can doing that in a classroom, looking at a critical race issue, and they're doing it in another way. But I think we as artists work that way inherently, Taiwo. And I'm super interested in what happens when folks who are interested in kind of deepening that work and the rigor of that work with young people, and also more critically thinking about where young people have choice and power within all of those steps.
Yeah.
You're really interested in
Yeah.
that. I think
Yeah.
Y Part gives us a really interesting way to sort of look critically and reflect on our work. Do I have it all figured out yet? I do not. But what I do know is I think there are tools and things we can develop together in our field that we can disseminate and that we can play with and tweak and get better with that help young people engage in those conversations with us. And to me, it's always about a co-constructed language for artistic perspective and quality as a thing that we should all own, right? It's not something that's told from above, but how are we co-designing that language so that we can all make this work together, evaluate it, assess it, and then continue to grow as artists and humans who want to make change.
Last question I'll ask you here before I let you go. I have so many questions to ask you, so I know that yeah, you and I need to have
That sounds great.
chat, and I know we had some ideas about some potential stuff next year. We'll see where that goes. What part of what I have seen over the years, particularly working with communities, particularly young youth, whatever, how we define that, is doing something without them, and a lot of the time, especially as adults, working within the with children, with youth, and all of that, really creating projects where they are not necessarily the one leading it, but we say we're doing it with them, but at the end of the day, we're making decisions, which is what you're talking about. It's at
Totally.
what point in that do they have power, make decisions, and all of that. So my question here that I would love you to or prompt, I would love you to kind of just love to hear your thought is, how has this process changed you? What have you learned from this process? How has that changed you in your own process and your own thinking? Because at times I think that the creative process itself, it's like PAR process, really. It's a circle. It's like, you keep going back and forth and things like that. How has that process, that YPAR, how has it changed you? What have you learned that you would love to share with us?
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I appreciate that question so much. I mean, I will say one of the kind of key theoretical frameworks I'm working on right now is reclaiming the work transformational learning. Mesereau and others write on that. And I am particularly interested in this idea of disorienting dilemma. I am deeply interested in this notion of why do any of this if we aren't growing from it? So this work is filled with disorienting dilemmas, Taiwo, filled with moments of like, what? I don't know, drat. Okay. And I think probably my greatest skill is my epistemic humility, that I am really, and I will say that comes with a lot of privilege. I have to say that I think epistemic humility sometimes, we can tell people to have it, and then I have a lot of privilege, so I can walk in a space with a lot of humility and vulnerability. And that was a heck of a lot harder when I was early career and felt like I had to perform something. Like now I have the access to do that. So I just always feel like I need to say that. And I also thought I built this project and I learned this project the most from this Koyukon Athabascan community when I first got started in all the work. So I'm going to jump way back in my career because it was so fundamental to my shaping. And that was, I had been working in this community for about 4 years, and I thought I was making change and doing all these amazing things. And then a number of tragedies happened in the community, and they shut down the project. And they said they didn't have time for the fun. And I was like, what? I'm not fun. I'm doing all this thing. And this was before I had done the really co-design with folks in Alaska. And I think in that work, in that moment, I realized that my service idea was not correct, that I was not interested in being a quote unquote service provider. I was deeply interested in questions of sustainable change that can only happen when we are co-designing from within. And like those folks gave me, and the tribal council gave me brilliantly 2 years and I was a student to do that. And I often felt I will never be as lucky as I was there because I was a student. And I felt like that position inherently put me in a place of wonder and inquiry that sometimes I have to struggle to get back to now because I've been doing this for a while and people will hold me up in a place that is not needed or necessary, or honestly, it isn't correct. The knowledge that you have about your community is just as equal as important as the fact that I've done this for a little while, right? It really is. We can't do any of this without those things having an equal space. So I find I'm often trying to undo those things now. And those young people in that very first story I told you in Australia did the same thing for me. Like, I think, even though I was like, oh, I'm working with the kids, but like, I think I couldn't, I had no idea that they would be uh, so good, so quick, so able and capable to figure out the things, to do the things right. And that just happens to me over and over again. I've just been running a big climate justice project with young people, and their immediate ideas for what we needed to do and that we had to do an arts festival. And the very first thing they said to me is, it needs to be a teach-in. It needs to not just be us showcasing our work, but it needs, everyone in the school needs to hear those experts who came in and told us about the climate equity plan and the history of racism in our city. Everyone needs to hear that. And I had not thought that. I thought I would be too much actually. And they were like, nope, that's what it needs to be. And I was like, great, let's make it happen. Let's figure that out. So, I think it's just slowing down and listening and not being afraid to be wrong. But again, I think some of that comes from also I have capacity to be wrong, which, I try to wield with strength.
This is amazing. It's a beautiful way to bring this to a close. We have capacity to be wrong,
Yeah.
and to wield it with strength. I love that, because that brings that epistemic humility that we've been talking about over and over again. When we understand that we have the capacity to be wrong, all of us, nobody is excluded.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wield it with that sense of humility, to listen to others, to be able to change whatever that change is, and to be able to have latitude for others when they make mistakes too.
Yeah.
So it's really great. Well, thank you so much. We've been talking to Professor Katie Dawson, and really it's been about youth participatory action research. And I'm really hoping that we can get you to my institute next year. I'm really hoping that will happen.
Me too. I'm excited to see what you'll all do with it. So
that's right.
If anyone is interested in this idea, it's early days. So I'm going to be trying to build some global access website to share out and disseminate all of these methods, because that is also a big part of my work, is open resource dissemination. I think this work is nothing I'm doing has not been outdone before. So like, I want everyone to use it and adapt it to make it what they need it to be.
That's right. Well, thank you so much. And this is again, this is Taiwo Afolabi signing out, and look forward to seeing the next episode. Bye.
You have been listening to Glocal Voices, the official podcast of the Center for Socially Engaged Theatre at the University of Regina. For more details about the center, visit www.cset.ca.